Hi there, welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to start try to get the top end together, but before I do that, this happens to be a Sunday afternoon. I received that chain on the back doorstep by courier yesterday, so I figured today I might as well put that on. The chain went on quite easily, but it was a little bit of fiddling around to get it to pass through the chain guard without scraping, because these chains are about 80 thou wider. Now that's just a little bit more than a 1/16 of an inch. About 80 thou wider than your standard DID chain, or the chain that these bikes came with. This is not an O-ring chain, but it's, like I say, the plates are a little bit heavier, and they last a really long time, especially if you keep them clean and lubricated. That chain should last them for ages. Anyway, that's it for that. Don't try the super heavy duty ones in these bikes. They are a great chain, but again, they're even wider than these ones, so you probably won't fit. I know I tried to fit one into a Commando probably about 5 years ago, but it was just too wide. It wouldn't go through the chain guard and stuff, so I just I put one of these in it instead, which is, like I said, it's still a really good chain. Really good, as a matter of fact. But anyway, worth every penny. So now let's move on with something else. Right, so I just started getting this top end assembled here. I've got the pistons mounted to the connecting rods. On some bikes it matters which way the pistons go, so pay very careful attention to that and make sure you haven't got them turned front to back or left to right. Excuse me. But anyway, this went together really simple. I put a little bit of white lithium grease on the new connecting rod bearings. And by the way, if you put new small M bearings in the end of these rods, don't forget to drill the top of through so that oil can actually get through from the top hole down into that bushing fairly easy. But anyway, before I put these on, I checked the fit of the pistons in the cylinders. That was textbook perfect. I checked the fit of the rings in the grooves. And I also checked the rings in the cylinders to make sure the end gaps were correct. So that's all good. They're all ready to go. The next thing I'm going to do is fit the rings onto the pistons so that they're ready to go in at the appropriate time. And what was the other thing I was going to mention? And most people probably already know this, but you want to wrap a rag or something around that crankcase mouth, because it's kind of unlikely that you're going to drop this type of snap ring into the crankcase. But if you do, then you're going to be looking for that for ages, trying to get that out of there. So best to wrap, like I said, a rag around that piston so that if you do drop the snap ring, it's not going to go down into the sump anyway. So I'm going to carry on with the cylinders. I'm going to give them a good scrubbing in soap and water, because the boss of me isn't home right now, so I can sneak them into the kitchen sink and get away with that. And then I'm going to give them a little paint job. Might as well put some nice fresh black paint on the cylinders while I'm at it. And then I'll be able to lower the cylinders down over the pistons. Of course, before I do that, I'm not going to forget to lubricate my camshaft, which is down in here under these blue rags and stuff. There, you can see it down in there. I'll put some of that, a little bit of that lithium grease on the camshaft lobes too, to make sure that they're going to be lubricated upon startup, so that I don't have to worry about them running dry or anything like that. I'm going to leave this bunch of rags here for now. Anyway, let's get on with that pair of cylinders next. Hey, I'm ready to start cleaning up these cylinders here. But one thing I wanted to mention is that sometimes after you get a rebore done, you lose this nice little lead-in taper on the bottom of the cylinders, and this is what helps your piston rings go up into the cylinders without catching on any sharp edges that would be right here. So that little chamfer or lead-in taper is kind of important. if you're not comfortable filing that in there as I do, I just take a mill smooth half round file and just file that. It's quite easy because cast iron is fairly soft, and you just put like a nice little 45-degree bevel on there and polish it up with a bit of fine emery cloth when you're done. But if you're not comfortable doing that, ask your machine shop to do that for you. And but like I say, it's good to have that lead-in taper there when you go to offer up the cylinders over the pistons. So now I'm going to go clean these. Okay, I just stuck those piston rings on there. They're gapped where I want them to be at the moment, about a third of the way around each. So anyway, those are ready to rock and roll, and I won't bother putting the compressors on them till I'm ready to actually install the cylinders. But anyway, I brought the cylinders back out here and give them another little clean up. And so after the kitchen sink episode there, I got them all cleaned out. I just wanted to show you the rag that I used to show you the stuff that comes off of those cylinders just with soap and water. That was the first patch that I used. There's the second one. The third one, you can tell by how much crap is on the different patches, right? But yeah, this is just soap and water. That's the stuff that was on the cylinders after the honing process. It's leftover carborundum or emery or whatever they happen to have in the stones or whatever. Anyway, yeah, that's why you should clean out those cylinders really well after you get them back from the machine shop, even though they look pretty anyway. But anyway, I sprayed them down, gave them a nice coat of nice shiny black paint. I think this is Delco. Yeah, that's AC Delco paint that a very good friend of mine gave me, oh God, years ago. And I've been kind of careful with where I use it and what I use it for. But it's engine enamel, and it works good for this sort of thing. And I prefer a gloss coat on cylinders because some people prefer flat, but I find that if you get any oil drippings or anything on a flat cylinder, all of a sudden you have a glossy spot on it. And if you want to know where a cylinder or a head is leaking or something in a real hurry, that's the way to do it. But I find gloss paint, it just stays nice looking on the cylinders longer than flat paint does. And some people, of course, like to use powder coat on them. I don't recommend it, although I do know fellas with powder coated cylinders do not having any problems. The reason why I don't recommend it is powder coat is so much thicker than paint, and it can cause overheating problems, especially if you've got too thick a coat of powder on it. But anyway, these, after they are dry, will be ready to go on. And well, it's getting close to probably 3:30 now. So that's enough for today. We'll let the paint on those cylinders dry up before I even think about putting them on. Okay, ready to put that cylinder on now. Everything's all lubed up with motor oil. Yes, lube them up. Some people will tell you to put a cylinder together dry, but I'm going to call bullshit on that. It's got nothing to do with breaking in or anything. Just common sense is all about break-in. But anyway, don't forget to put the valve tappets in there, or the cam followers, if you prefer to call them that. I just pack them in there with grease most of the time, and I find that that white lithium, that thin grease, will basically hold them in place. If you don't have the snap rings on the other side of them, like this one doesn't, right? So, and then as a little bit of insurance, if you're still a little worried you might fall out, like I am sometimes, just take some pieces of fuel line, stick them on the other end of the tappets, and that way they can't fall out. So, anyway, that's all ready to go. Let me show you what I've got over here on the engine. Pistons are in. I like to take the clamps off the compressors and just use zip ties when I'm doing this. I find that a good tight zip tie will provide just the right amount of pressure to hold the rings in without squeezing too hard on the pistons. So most of the time, when you go to offer the cylinders up over the pistons, most of the time they'll just slide right down over. Got a couple of 1/4-inch rods slipped in underneath the pistons to keep them from wobbling around while I'm doing this. The gasket has got that, it's red Loctite. It's an anaerobic type sealer, so that will remain liquid or jelly-like until you remove the oxygen. In other words, when the flange goes down on you, tighten it up. That's when this magical stuff turns into a gasket sealer. So anyway, I'm ready to put those cylinders on. So I'm going to put this camera in the tripod, and you'll get to see whether I was successful or not. Right. Now now's the draw period. Carefully get these down over the pistons and pray to the gods of engine assembly that this goes together nicely. Well, holy crap. That just went down there as slick could be. And I'm going to get some wire cutters, snip those zip ties off, remove the bands, and drop the cylinders down in place the rest of the way. Okay, excellent. Okay, I might as well record this little episode here while I'm doing this. So I'm just going to snip off zip ties. That's one. And then ever so carefully remove the compressor bands. And I'm just going to leave that rod in there just for now. It doesn't need to be there anymore, but over on the other side, do the same thing. Yeah, snip this off of here. Okay, that's another one right there. And here comes the band from that side. Always have a look around the piston when you do this to make sure. There, it just fell in place all by itself almost. Yeah, just to make sure that there aren't any little telltale signs of broken cast iron or anything like that. Because if there are, then you got to take them off, have a look at the rings, and see which one you broke, and then put it all back together. Just going to make sure that gasket material is spread around good. There we go. I'll go around to this side. This rod. There we go. Smear that gasket cement over where the rod was sitting. And the tappets are all still in place. I'm just going to lower that down there. Now all I got to do is bolt that down. I can pull off these rubber hoses from the end of those tappets. Yeah, that's great. Okay, now it's just a matter of bolting that down, and it'll be time for the cylinder head. All right, I'm about ready to put the cylinder head on here. You see I've got the 2 motor studs back in the cylinder block again, so they're ready to go. But want to talk a little tiny bit about head gaskets. This is a solid copper head gasket. These can be used indefinitely, but you have to anneal them after each use. And when you get a new solid copper head gasket, they are not annealed. They're just punched out of copper sheets. So you got to anneal them before you use them. If you get away without that, you were lucky. But anyway, this one had not ever been annealed. It was a new head gasket, I could tell just from looking at it, from the last time it was installed, but it had not been annealed. Annealing gives it this kind of a sort of a pinkish color, actually, after you brush the what would you call that, oxidation off it that happens after you heat something up to a cherry red like that. Anyway, anneal your head gaskets before you put them in, unless of course you have the type of head gasket you don't need to anneal, like a composite head gasket or something like that. Anyway, I'm going to get ready to drop that head on there. Alright, there's the cylinder head. It's been cleaned up as you've seen in some of the previous videos. Anyway, that's all set to go back on. It's been sitting there patiently waiting for weeks and weeks and weeks to be finally put back in its place. So let's get this in place. There we go. Now it's just a matter of putting the nuts and bolts in there, tightening everything down, getting everything torqued up, and yeah, she's coming together. Okay, that didn't take very long. The 5 head bolts are torqued down to 25 foot-pounds. The outer ones are 26 on these 4 nuts that are on the outside. And the pushrod tubes are tubes. I'm thinking of a Triumph now. The pushrods themselves are set down in the tunnel. They go on the outer, the 2 shorter pushrods go on the outer tappets. So anyway, to get those on, it's quite easy. You really just stick a screwdriver underneath the rocker arm there and just lift the valve open until you can get the push rod underneath. Everything, again, those cups are all lubricated with a little bit of that white lithium grease, which I'm so fond of. Now all I have to do is assemble the rocker arms and spindle for the exhaust rockers. So let's get on with that, and then we'll get those push rods in there as well. It's just a matter of putting that last push rod under the rocker arm, just like that. Shine a light down there just to make sure they didn't come off the tips of the tappets there. Oh, everything looks good. Okay. Excuse me. Set this over here. And now that everything is assembled, I will run the engine through a couple of turns just to make sure nothing's binding. Okay, that's 2 turns. Everything seems to be opening and closing smoothly like it should. That's about top center. Let's see, yeah, top center. I've got two rocker arms rocking. The intake's just starting to open when the exhaust is closing, so I'm sure that my valve timing is right that way. Oh, not that I've already set the what am I thinking of there? Ah, dang it! I've already set the timing marks on the cam and the crank pinion anyway, so I know they're in the right spots. But it's always a good idea to check and see if those two exhaust and intake rockers are just rocking at top center. That way, one is still slightly open and closing, while the other one is closed and starting to open. So anyway, that's a little bit complicated. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, that's it. I just need to set the valve clearances, and I can put the cover on the cylinder head, and we'll call the top end all done too. Okay, it's past 4:30, going uphill toward 5 o'clock now. I think we'll call that a day. Anyway, this was pretty good, pretty productive day, you know. Got the cylinders on, got the head on, got that all torqued down, got the valve cover on after setting the valve lash and all that stuff. Even put that little top end oil supply line on there and primed that before I did it. I just stuck a couple old spark plugs in there for now, just in case it drop anything down spark plug holes. That wouldn't be any fun. But anyway, yeah, that's enough for tonight. Well, I got those new Amel concentrics on there. They're the new Premier type. Anyways, I took them all apart and I just checked to make sure they had the right slides and the main jets and all that sort of stuff in there are correct for this particular bike. And so they're all bolted on, ready to go. I just stuck those little velocity stacks on there for fun. They come with them, right? But anyway, before I give this back to the guy that owns it, I'll make sure I put a nice new set of air cleaners on there. Yeah, so that pretty much wraps it up for the top end. I think I will be putting some oil in the primary and in the engine and transmission just to check for leaks. It's Friday, so I can just let it sit for the weekend and hopefully I don't have any leaks. If I have any leaks, well, I'll have to address them before I do anything else. But for now, it looks like the next thing is to put the exhaust back on the engine and fit the horrible electronic ignition. I'm sorry to those people who like electronic ignition. I just don't. Give me the points and coils any day. But anyway, this guy wants the electronic ignition, so that's what he's going to get. Alright, well, that wraps it up, like I said, for this episode. Thank you very much for watching. Be good to each other. See you next time.